Welcome to Dumb Love. I'm Sally Brooks.
And I'm Jen O'Neill Smith, and this is a podcast about all of the dumb things that we do for love.
Dum 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 dee doo be dum 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 dee doo be dum 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 dee doo be dum wow 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 wow.
So welcome to episode 5.
We're on 5!
I never thought we'd make it here.
Me neither, but we did it.
We did it. All thanks to you guys. Thank you for listening and for engaging, for writing in, for subscribing, for all of the things. It's been awesome.
Yeah, it's been great. We've gotten a lot of really great reviews, which we super appreciate. We appreciate all of your engagement on our social medias and such.
We're trying to figure out social media. So if you have any tips, let us know, because we are dumb.
We are dumb. There's a reason that we're doing this podcast, because we're dumb. But we're so excited about all of the stories that you guys are sending in. That's like what I'm most excited about, because they are awesome. Thanks for shout out to people like Jessica Benoit from Detroit, Michigan. It's Benoit, but I like to say Benoit.
It sounds fancier.
I know.
Maybe she should change it.
I've tried to get her to change it. She's not listening to me. But sweet Jess Benoit, who sent in her story that we put on our Instagram, and everybody else who's been sending stories, which brings me to my first quickie today is going to be a story that was sent in from Shanda Sung from Bloomington, Indiana.
Shanda.
Yes. You know her.
I do know her. She is an amazing comedian.
Oh, hell yeah.
And a cool mom, which
Hell
is like
yeah.
secondary, but also, I feel like she has like, we recorded, we're going to have an album out that we will both be on that should come out sometime soon.
Oh, cool.
That we recorded for SiriusXM a couple months ago. And her first line, at the time we recorded it, she had a 6-month-old. And her opening line got me every time. She'd be like, "Hey, everybody, I had a baby 6 months ago and I look fine. I look fine. I look okay. I'm doing all right. Let's all just agree I look fine." And it just every time got me. So anyways, I'm so excited to hear her story because I haven't read it.
Oh, that's awesome. And also shout out to, this is like the second time we've mentioned Bloomington, Indiana on we're on our 5th podcast and we've mentioned Bloomington, which is like a cool ass city.
It's a cool ass city with one of, if not the best comedy clubs in the country.
It really is. Shout out to the Comedy Attic. When I had to go to Bloomington for comedy, like several people were like, "Oh, you're gonna love it," and I was like, "I will." Like Bloomington, and then when I got there, I was like, "Oh, I did." Like I totally understand now.
Yeah.
Why everyone loves Bloomington,
Every
and
time
I really
I'm
can't
there-
describe it. You just gotta go.
Yeah, every time I'm there, I'm like taking pictures of houses and sending them to my husband. Like, "Hey, maybe we could live here. Maybe you could get a job here." He's like, "Do you really want to live in the middle of Indiana again?" I went to college in Indiana at Purdue, not at Bloomington, but I'm like, I could live here. I could do it.
Oh man, I was fantasizing about all of the cute little apartments in the little walkable downtown area. And I was just like looking at all of the pricing and definitely envisioning myself running away from everyone.
Yeah, me too.
It's my favorite.
So Shanda, you're living our best life.
Yes. Thanks, Shanda. All right, I'm going to go ahead and get into her story, which is pretty amazing. Okay. Shanda says, "My grandpa was a long-haul trucker when I was around 4 or 5. He was married to my grandma and had been since they were teenagers. And they have, question mark in parentheses, 5 kids. He was off on a trip and he came back married to a woman that he had met on the road. He had to break... Yeah.
Wait, in addition to the grandma?
Yes.
Oh.
He was married and then he went out and then got married once more to a woman that he met on the road. He had to break this news to my grandma, who was, to put it straight, a scary ass, no nonsense woman. Most grandmas are, right?
Oh, I mean, yes, in my experience.
Yeah, my grandma was a scary ass, no nonsense. Why am I saying nonsense weird?
I don't know.
Nonsense woman. He was able to tell her that while he was away, he married a truck stop prostitute named Nancy. and would need to go ahead and end their 20-something year marriage is beyond me. But he did. Holy crap. That's me
amazing.
saying holy crap, Nang Shanda. Nancy was a wild alcoholic whirlwind in her late 50s who liked to get up on bars and flash the room her boobs to show off that she tattooed sugar on one and spice on the other. On her boobs, I guess. Sugar and spice. Oh, my God. They were married for around 5 years before she put him into debt and then skipped town. Of course she did.
Good for her.
Nancy. They were married. My grandparents eventually reconciled and remained friends until my grandma passed away 10 years ago, but not before announcing to my grandpa on her deathbed in a room full of family that she wanted him to quote unquote do her. And then she writes, which I guess was kind of sweet, question mark. Is it? Is that sweet? I mean, I hope he didn't do well. I mean, if that's what she wanted,
What
you get to pick what meal you want right before you die. If you want to get done by your ex-husband who married a prostitute, hey man,
more power to you.
More power to you. And that's this week's write-in quickie. Thanks again to Shanda Sung from Bloomington, Indiana.
Thank you, Shanda. That is amazing. Please write in. Give us yours. If you have one yourself, your grandma has a story. Maybe your grandma ran off with a truck stop prostitute or a trucker. That would be amazing. Write in.
Oh,
it's
man.
at dumblovepod@gmail.com.
Yes, I want to hear some grandma stories.
Okay, so mine isn't at a write-in, but I found it on the internets. And this is my quickie. So this is in June 2011, Maria Nilza Simoes. She lived in a small town in Brazil, and she discovered that her husband was having an affair. And of course she was furious, and rightfully so, right? And so instead of leaving her shitbag husband, though, she decides, I'm going to hire a hitman to kill his lover. So
to kill the lover?
Yeah.
Kill him.
Right? I know. I'm like, if you're going to, but she's not like, she's like a mafioso wife. Like she's a housewife in a tiny town in Brazil. And so she goes to like the one ex-con that she knows, this guy, Carlos Roberto de Jesus. And she asks him to do it, and he agrees to kill the lover. Her name is Lupita, for $400. And so they decide June 24th is the day he's going to do the deed. And he was like all set to do it. And so he's like starts, trying to locate Lupita, and then he finds her, and he was like, oh, that's like my childhood friend.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So he was like, I can't do it. So he goes to Lupita and he tells her like, I was hired to kill you, but I've got a plan.
Dude, if I told you that I was hired to kill you, would you believe me?
No. I'd be like, Jen, nobody would hire you to kill anyone.
What if I told you?
That's why you were doing this podcast?
I started this podcast.
Well, that would be like a really good finale, like story. Like,
oh yeah,
yeah. Well, that you'll know when it's just Jen doing the podcast that I follow through.
I follow through with things.
Yeah. When Jen commits, she commits.
If you hire me to do a job, I will do it.
No, so he tells Lupita, he's like, "Oh yeah, your lover's wife wants to kill you, but I've got a plan." And so he gets 2 bottles of ketchup. He squirts it all over her shirt. They put a blindfold on her, and then they stick a knife like in between her armpit and her side. Like, did you ever do that when you were a kid? Like just a kitchen knife. Where you're like, oh, look, and you turn to the side and you're like, look, I have a knife in me.
I feel like this was a Brady Bunch episode.
I mean, maybe. It sounds like it, except, so then they take a picture of her with ketchup and the knife sticking out of her armpit, but from the top, so you can just see it, that it's clearly in between her arm and her
Did she have side. Did she draw X's on her eyes with a Sharpie?
No, they had a blindfold over.
Oh, okay.
Right. That would have been the photo is ridiculous. We'll post it on our Instagram.
Hell yeah.
But so he takes this picture and he shows it to Maria, who is the wife, and she's like, yep, she looks dead. Because she's probably never seen a photo of a dead body. So she pays Carlos, And then 2 days later, she's like, has a huge shock when she's walking. This is a tiny town. She walks to the local market and sees Carlos and Lupita making out.
Oh my gosh.
Well, it's the article actually says canoodling.
Which means making out.
I would like just say what they were doing. Were they kissing? Were they like fondling? I don't know. I just imagine canoodling is like just a bunch of loopy arms and legs around each other.
Like noodling each other. Like
yes,
noodling.
That's exactly what I. So Maria, the wife, is super pissed. And she's like, she's so level-headed, right? We know that about her. So she goes to the local police station and reports Carlos for theft.
For not following through on
her murder and taking her money.
So what? Okay, finish.
Okay, so now they're like, so they all three were facing charges. Maria for issuing death threats and soliciting a killer, and Lupita and Carlos for extortion. And so Carlos skipped town immediately. He was like, well, I'm not going to be a part of this. And then Maria, the wife, became like a public laughingstock because everybody was like, how did you not know?
Yeah.
She wasn't dead. And then Lupita has become like a local celebrity. Like apparently she started being called Ketchup Woman, and she was being considered for a seat on the local town hall.
What? Just for having ketchup on you? That's all it takes?
I guess so. There was like a quote in the article that was like, well, our town hall is messed up anyway. Why not add some ketchup to it? And she was like, well, this is something I'm going to have to really consider.
Oh my God. That's all. See, we should move to a smaller town because if that's all it takes to get fame
in our local towns.
Yeah. We'll just.
I'll pour ketchup on you.
I'll pour any condiment you want on you, and I would be happy to stage your death.
Oh, thank you.
Anytime.
All right.
Man, that's crazy. That's a crazy story.
Yeah.
I like it. Hey, Sally.
Yes, Jen.
Guess what?
What?
You know how last time you said that you used found a story on killer couples?
Oh, yeah. Snapped killer couples?
Yeah, dude. Well, I was like, well, I'm going to get a story from killer couples.
Copycat.
Dope. To be fair, I did do extra research, but most of it comes from an episode of Snapped Killer Couples.
I mean, it's a great resource.
It's an amazing it's a well of information.
Yeah.
So this is the story. My long story, I'm going to do the not so nice love story. Is about a couple named Melissa Bredow and James Belanger. Melissa goes by Missy, so I'm going to call her Missy for the duration of the story.
It's not that you guys are like best buds.
No, I don't know her personally.
You're like, I mean, her good friends call her Missy.
But I do know that she prefers to be called Missy, so I'm going to do her that courtesy. Okay, so growing up, Missy didn't have a lot of friends. She lived in Alpina, Michigan. Alpina?
I have no idea.
Alpina.
It's
Alpina.
It's what you
I
want
think
it to
that's
be.
my typo. I think it's Alpina, but I'm gonna.
Okay.
Alpina, Michigan.
Are you sure it's not just Alpine?
Probably. So growing up, she didn't have a lot of friends. She was kind of a troublemaker. She was always getting into trouble and fought with her parents a lot. Her dad worked on boats and was never home. So it was just like her mom, and her four other siblings. And so she didn't really get a lot of attention as a kid, which is probably why she acted out. And so when she was a teenager, she finally made a friend, if you will. His name is 13-year-old Jason Belanger. And they quickly fell in love and became best friends. It was a real Romeo and Juliet type situation.
At 13,
Yeah, 13.
Okay.
Hey, that's how old Romeo and Juliet were.
Yeah, but they weren't real people.
Yeah, but I mean, Claire Danes and Leonardo DiCaprio were real.
That's right.
So I don't understand your point.
I'm
but
sorry.
anyway.
I sorry even suggested that was a work of fiction. I apologize. 13 is a totally normal age.
So they were 13.
To fall in love.
And they fall. You didn't fall in love at 13. Like, you didn't have crushes at 13.
Oh, yeah, sure. Totally.
But not real love. You think you're in love. But
No, the first guy I kissed was at summer camp. His name was Kevin Gears. And neither of us, it was both of our first kisses, and neither of us knew how. So we just basically open mouth, kissed like
Clam?
fish. Like no tongue, just moving our mouths, I guess, the way we thought that people would. And then I was later when I turned 16, I was a counselor in training at that summer camp. And one of the girls in my cabin was 11 or 12, and she was talking about her boyfriend, Kevin Gears. And I was like,
what?
I was like, who is your boyfriend? Is he from, I can't remember whatever town in Ohio? And she was like, yeah, he thinks I'm 14 though. And I was like, oh my God.
Oh my God. Scandal.
Scandal.
So what did you do? Did you tell him?
I was no longer in touch. It wasn't
because back then you didn't have cell phones and stuff.
Yeah, and also we met when we were 12, so this is 4 years later.
Oh my God. So he was making out with an 11-year-old?
Yeah.
Dude.
When he was 16. But he didn't know. He thought she was 14.
I wonder if we should change the name.
Schmevenschmears.
Schmevenschmears. So as not to have him retroactively arrested for... Well, I guess he was a kid too.
He was a kid too. He didn't know.
Oh my God, that's crazy. Yeah.
So yes,
kids.
I of course I had crushes and thought that I was... I remember talking on the phone with my middle school boyfriend, Max, which I just realized is also my son's name.
I know. It's what?
Weird. And for hours and hours and hours. And yeah.
Yeah. So let's give these Missy and Jason a break then, eh?
Okay. I'm sorry.
I'm just kidding. They were in love.
Okay, they were in love. True love. I get it. Just like me and Mevin Mears.
Mevin Mears. She met 13-year-old Jason Belanger. And Jason actually, according to everyone on the show, they were very pro Jason in this story, which I'll get to later. I don't know if I really am feeling it.
I feel like, I don't know when Killer Couples was made, but it feels very
sexist.
Yes,
it does.
It just feels very slut shamey.
Totally.
Yeah.
We'll get into this a little more at the end of the story because
Okay.
I have feelings. I have feelings on it. But yeah, so they say, Jason came from a good family and he was pretty straight and narrow and he got good grades, but Missy was a wild child.
Oh, so she's the one who corrupted him?
Yeah, totally. So she was the bad influence on him, and Jason's parents were really upset about the change in his behavior. He was sneaking out at night to go see her, yada yada. He didn't sound like he did anything that terrible that 13-year-olds do, but whatever. So his parents made him break up with Missy by moving out of the town completely, moving out of Alpina. Mm-hmm. So they moved just to keep them away. And Missy, of course, was devastated.
Yeah.
Because that was her boyfriend. So she then turns to drugs and alcohol and drops out of school. And then she had a one-night stand and got pregnant. And so she really wasn't being so young. Addicted to drugs and alcohol. She couldn't really take care of her daughter. So her parents got custody of her daughter. So over time, she kind of turned to her next door neighbor for guidance. And it was a 69-year-old man named James Orban who would just kind of sit outside. Those old people that just sit outside in chairs and they talk to everyone.
Yes.
He was that guy. So he was a retired factory worker, and after months of talking to him or whatever, they ended up striking a big friendship. And he wanted her to help her out and he wanted to, help take care of her. So what he would do is he would let her work for him by buying him groceries, cleaning his house, and he would give her money and attention or whatever.
Okay. I'm like just waiting for this to turn bad. Like, okay, well, this guy sounds nice. Also, I hate that I know she couldn't take care of her kid, but also they're giving another kid to these parents who fucked up one kid already.
I know. Yeah.
I mean, not to blame the parents, but it sounded like they weren't great parents.
Yeah. I mean, I think that they weren't. Obviously, something was going on to make her such a
I mean, maybe
child.
Who knows? I know.
Who knows? Yeah,
maybe
we'll
strike
feel
that.
differently when we're when we have teenagers.
Yeah, and I'll be like, oh my God, this was like, because I said that on the podcast.
Well, because I was a terrible ass kid, teenager. I was the worst teenager you can imagine.
Were you
I
really?
I wouldn't say my parents were like, it wasn't really their fault.
Right.
Yeah, I was the worst.
What did you do, bad stuff?
Yeah, I definitely, I started smoking at like 14 and smoking weed at 14 and drinking. I'm putting this all on the podcast, but my parents already know this now. But I was the middle child, so I kind of went under the radar, and I would sneak out and go to punk shows all the time. At one point, me and my best friend Corey stole her parents' car.
What?
We crashed her on the side of the road because we were going to see the Impotent Sea Snakes at the Masquerade. We were like 15. We didn't even have a license.
The Impotent Sea Snakes?
Yes.
What?
At 15. We were terrible, terrible kids. But I'm a great adult.
You are a great adult.
I got it all out of my system young.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, yeah, that's why I was like, I need to take that back. That's not I don't believe in the like everything is the parents' fault.
Yeah. Well, because according to Killer Couples, Missy is just a rotten egg.
Right. Well, obviously.
So, but she, so basically she was trying to get her life together and be like a better, daughter and mother. And she was doing better. She was kind of atoning and like trying to apologize to her parents for being terrible and be
How old
better.
was she at this point?
She was, I think, around maybe 20 years old.
Okay.
Yeah. But then in September of 2001 at a party, Missy runs into dun 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 Jason.
Okay.
For her old love. So they immediately fall back in love, and they're adults now, so they could do whatever the hell they want.
Yeah.
So they move
Screw
in
you,
together
Mom.
like immediately.
Okay.
So within 2 weeks of them getting back together, 2 weeks, all of a sudden her next door neighbor James's house is engulfed in flames. Do you want to know why?
Yeah, I do. I have a guess.
So firefighters find his body on the kitchen floor, and right away they see that it is not a normal fire at all. Like right away, there's accelerant all over. There's a strong smell of gasoline, which shows that someone had set the fire.
Right.
Was it? On top of that, they also see that all of his belongings had been tossed about his entire house. Like it had been completely ransacked. And then the autopsy also shows that he had multiple stab wounds, including a deadly stab to the wound to the jugular. So they were able to see that he was actually dead before the fire had started. So it obviously suggests this was a very personal crime. So here we go. There's twists and turns. As they're going through his belongings, they discover like child pornography and photos of young children all over his house.
Yeah, that's what I was waiting for.
And then you were?
Yeah.
I didn't see that coming at all.
You don't see like when you're like, oh, this 69-year-old old man wants to help out this young girl.
No, I would have been like, what do you mean? No, you're right. You're totally right. Red flag, red flag. He had been, so then they realize after looking into the crime, they see that he had actually been investigated for criminal sexual contact in 1993 and was a registered sex offender. And although he had served no jail time. So I guess like what happened was he got arrested for criminal sexual contact with a minor, and then we're like, just go live over here then, okay? Bye.
Right, like don't
please.
live by a school, but I'm sure
Yeah.
no other kids will live near you.
You promise you won't do nothing? Okay. Bye. So another neighbor also tells the police that 2 weeks prior to the fire, someone had spray painted in red paint on his garage door a child molester across his door. So now, of course, the police are thinking that whoever did this, may have been a victim of one of his past victims, and they were exacting revenge. So a neighbor also tells the police that
Who is this neighbor?
this neighbor knows everything. They should have just went straight to this neighbor. The neighbor is the other old guy that sits on the front lawn. The good one. That's like James again. God damn it. So he tells the police that at the fire scene that a man had approached him and asked if they had found a body. Or found the body, but at the time, this is like the oldest trick in the book, dude, or the oldest mistake in the book.
Right,
like,
don't go to the scene,
and don't be like, did they find the body yet? When it's just like at a flooded house or something, right. You know what I mean? So of course the neighbor was like, how do you know there's a body? I
didn't tell you his name was James. Like, yeah.
They also said that the man smelled really strongly like a campfire.
Oh, sorry.
He didn't even change his clothes. So yeah, this guy's a dummy. So neighbors also told the police that, so the neighbors are just like, we got a lot of talking to do, police.
They're like people in a Law and Order episode who are just like so observant.
Like
if somebody came over and was like, hey, have you noticed anything about your neighbors across the street? I'd be like, I literally have never seen them. I have no idea who lives anywhere around me.
This is like the next door neighbor app before it was an app.
Right.
It was like every single neighbor just talks about everything. So they tell the police that Melissa and James actually had a very strange relationship, just like you said, Sally. Mm-hmm. They said that they had seen them holding hands and kissing.
No.
And so like a 20-year-old and a 69-year-old man making out, people are going to notice that. That's weird and grossing. So Melissa, so police, of course, interrogate Melissa. Missy says, I keep calling her Melissa. Now I'm rude. I'm rude.
So rude. You guys are buds.
I know. So Missy had actually said that she had known him since he was a child. And she said that she knew that he was a child molester, but that they were just friends. Oh, cool.
Okay.
Cool friend, dude.
It's like one of those things. Like we all have to look past the flaws of our friends,
And then guess what? Another neighbor tells the police that, they're like, hey, we used to have a child arsonist that lived in this neighborhood. And guess who the arsonist was? Missy's boyfriend, Jason. Jason was the arsonist.
Jason, the good kid, Jason.
Yeah,
from
totally.
a good family.
Totally. That's what I'm saying. Like, whoever wrote this Killer Couples episode is like, you're forgetting when you're going on and on about what an awesome person Jason was, and Missy like turned him and ruined him. He was a fucking child fire starter. He was Drew Barrymore fire starter.
And she was getting her life together, and then she met him, and then
he fucked her up. Yeah. Okay. So police so when they find out that he used to start fires, they call him interrogate him, and he tells them that him and Missy had he tells them that him and Missy had just gotten married the day before.
Okay.
So so the fire starts and then they go and get married. Okay. So then he says that he knew that he was a sex offender, and that he would just throw stuff at his house when he was a kid, but that he had nothing to do with the fire. And the police are like, yeah, I don't know if you're telling the truth. And also, you have some blood stains on your hat, dude. I know. He's so dumb. And so he goes to the fucking interrogation with blood stains on his hat.
He's like, this is my lucky hat, man. My team's playing tonight, and they always win when I wear it, so I can't not wear it.
Does it smell like a campfire to you? So Jason ends up making a confession. So he tells them that between the ages of 10 and 14 that James Orban used to sexually abuse him. And he says that he got really drunk one night and decided to go over there and beat him up. And he says that when he got there, though, James was like letting his cat out and open the door. So instead, he forced his way inside James's house. James grabbed a frying pan to hit him. So to defend himself, he had to stab him a bunch of times, I guess. So he said that the next day, he went back to set the fire. So police arrest him and they bring in Missy for questioning. And Missy, you know, she confesses that, you know, she helped him dispose of his bloody clothes, but that's all that she was involved at all. So she takes him to the dumpster where the bloody clothes were thrown away. And Belanger goes to jail for first-degree murder, and she remains free. And the police are like, there's definitely more to this story. But you guys are not saying it. Like, why would his house be ransacked if this was just like an act of self-defense?
Right. Like if it was like a sudden thing, like
yeah. But they're like, whatever, because he's in jail and we got him, whatever. So
we don't need the whole story. We're fine. It's all case closed.
I don't feel like doing anything. It's the weekend. So he goes to jail and Missy visits him like once a week for like a year. And she actually surprises him in telling him that she's pregnant with his baby. And she has this baby. And then after a year, she kind of stops showing up and going to visit him. And then she actually moves away with her family and 2 kids to start a whole new life without him. So when he finds this out, he's pissed.
Yeah.
So mad. So in December of 2002, he goes to the authorities and tells them that in exchange for a plea deal and a lesser sentence, he's ready to tell them the real story.
Okay, so had he been in jail awaiting sentencing?
He like had already been sentenced and was in jail for a year.
So then now he wants like his sentence reduced. That's what he's
I think
for.
so.
Okay.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So he tells them that the whole molestation story was a complete lie, that he was never abused by him. He had actually never even met him until his wife, Missy, introduced him to him. And then he said that he killed him on the orders of his wife, Missy, that Missy was the one that told him to do it. He said that James was basically her sugar daddy and that the only source of income that the 2 of them had together, because they both had, drug problems.
Right.
The only money that they were getting was from him. Yeah. So he was supporting not only their lifestyle, but they're like paying their rent, all that stuff. But James had given, when he found out that Missy was using the money for drugs, he had given her an ultimatum regarding her drug use and was like, look, you shouldn't be using drugs. And if I find out you're spending money on them, I'm going to cut you off. Like, oh, look at the moral compass on this guy. The molester with a heart of gold, I guess. Like, fuck off. Okay.
So had he been molesting her?
So
am I jumping the gun?
I guess we'll get into that because she never admits, like never admits that like kind of anything happened between the 2 of them. So maybe. Right. But, but he finds out, James had found out that Missy was using drugs and he cut her off. But he also told Missy, this is all according to Jason, that he had told Missy that she was the only person on his will, so that like even though he had cut her off financially, but he told her that she was the only person on his will and that if something had ever happened to him, he would leave her everything. So, but this is true. She did right after the fight, after he was killed. Yeah. She did go down to the courthouse to see if he had left her anything. And, not only did, he lied about how much money he was living, like paid like disability check to disability check just to support
he's just
her.
Sitting on his porch all day.
He didn't have any money. And not only that, he had left everything to his brother. So, but So Jason, Jason says that when he cut her off, she immediately started plotting his murder, and that she is the one that suggested that they get married because she watches a lot of true crime TV like us, and told him that if they get married that they can't testify on each other, marital privilege or whatever, which is only sometimes true. There's a lot of rules around that.
Yeah.
So anyway, so she goes and she finds out that she's not getting any money anyway, which womp, womp, womp. But then that also explains why the house was ransacked. They ransacked it to look for any kind of money or whatever. So when he tells him, she immediately gets arrested, and she goes to court. And in court, she finds out that marital privilege, a few years earlier in her state, was modified. So I don't really quite understand this part. I couldn't wrap my head around it. They said that it only applies to the testifying spouse and not the defendant. So Jason was able to be the prosecution's star witness against Missy.
Yeah.
And then her lawyers, claim that she had nothing to do with it. And then he says she definitely did. And there really wasn't very much evidence at all showing that she did, besides her going down to the courthouse. But they still found her guilty on all accounts. And she'll be in jail for the rest of her life. And he got a lesser sentence and will be out sooner than she will, even though he's the one that stabbed.
That actually did the crime. Yeah, so the way that marital privilege works is that the...
Oh, yeah, you're a lawyer.
But don't quote me on these things, because it's been a really long time since I practiced any law. Is that you can only invoke it. So it's not automatic. You can decide whether or not you want to invoke marital privilege. So because he decided to testify, she couldn't invoke it on his behalf. She couldn't say, no, you can't testify against me because you're my husband. But he could say, no, I'm not going to testify against my wife. Does that make sense?
Gotcha. Yes,
so that's what it means. Like, it goes on the witness, not on the defendant.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Okay. So is there more?
No. So that's pretty much it. That's how it ends. And it's a sad story. And I mean, she's definitely responsible for her actions, and he's responsible for his actions.
Right. But she's not responsible for his actions.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. And the whole episode, even at the very end, one of the, guests on the show or whatever, I think it was his prosecution's attorney, prosecuting attorney or whatever, or would prosecuting her, made some comment like, yes, what he did was terrible, but what she did was far worse. She manipulated and used and took money from this man who was a child molester, by the way.
Right.
And she was far more guilty and should serve way more jail time. And I just feel like the whole thing was just
very sexist.
Totally.
It sounds
and
so
I wasn't
slut-shamey.
into it.
I am not into this murder.
Not into this murder.
This was not a fun one. Everybody was bad. I hated it.
Everyone was bad. Not a good person in the lot.
No. But they were in true love at 13. So, Jen.
Yeah. This was a real Romeo. And this is kind of like, remember at Romeo and Juliet, nobody wins, everybody dies.
Everybody dies.
It's a sad, sad tale of woe.
That's right. It's exactly the same.
This is what this is. This is Shakespearean.
This is very Shakespearean. Jen.
Sally.
You're not going to believe this.
I probably won't.
I have a love story. I feel like we need it.
Oh, yes. Because, everybody just died in my life.
Well, listen, this is not all sunshine either, but
okay.
It is. It's a true love story, and I sent you a message to tell you I'm so excited to tell it, and I really hope that I do it justice.
I'm sure you will.
Because I think it's important, and only because this is our podcast, I'm going to insert myself into this story, even though I have nothing to do with it, but I just am very tangentially related to it. So it takes place in the couple It takes place in Cincinnati, Ohio, which is where Ben and I lived for like 6 years. We moved there after we hiked the Appalachian Trail. And we both went to grad school at University of Cincinnati, and we bought our first house there and then owned it for 10 years after we moved because we couldn't sell it. But it's where I started comedy. It's where I think Ben and I both still think of it as like our home, even though we only really lived there for 6 years. But anyway, so we love Cincinnati. But so this is a story of Jim Obergefell and John Arthur. Do you know it?
No.
Okay, so Jim and John like to joke that theirs was like love at third sight. So they had met twice in the early 90s when they were like in their mid-20s at a bar called Uncle Woody's in Cincinnati, which also they didn't have a love connection the first 2 times they met. Like they met and they were like, oh, okay, he's nice, whatever. But Uncle Woody's is also right across from the Cincinnati College of Law, which is where I went to law school. And it's also where I almost got arrested because after finals, my first finals, I was like standing in a group of people on the front porch of this bar, which is like right on the road, who were all smoking pot. And this cop came up to the circle and was just like, really? Like it was like a bunch of like people in law school who should know better were just like, he was like, come on guys. And we were like, oh.
But you were not partaking. You were just standing there.
Yeah, I was just standing there, just like chatting.
Right.
I was just chatting. No, yeah. So so dumb. But so that was like the college, my law school hangout was this bar. So Uncle Woody's didn't do it for him. I get it. It's a total dive. But like the third time they met was at a mutual friend's party. And Jim says like, that was it. He says, I never left. Like, so they were like inseparable. They moved in together right away. They both came from like a large Irish Catholic family. And by the time Jim came out, his mom had already died, but everybody else in his family was just like, yeah, we knew. We knew. And John had a little bit of a harder time. His mom and his siblings were were fine and happy for him, but his father, he had a strained relationship. And so it took a little bit longer, but he said eventually he did come around. So Jim was like the quiet, serious one. But everybody said that John was like just super charismatic and he had like this wicked sense of humor. And so years go by and they were like the kind of couple where everybody said their name like together in one breath. Like it wasn't just Jim or John, it was Jim and John or John and Jim. Yeah. Oh yeah. John. Yeah, it doesn't really work that way. You can't really do Jim and John. And they even worked. They actually worked together in IT. And sometimes they worked at a couple different companies together. And sometimes their desks were next to each other. They rehabbed old houses together. They had the same friends. They had the same hobbies. And people just thought of them as like a solid, quiet couple. They were together for like 22 years. And so then in 2011, when he was just 46, John started falling down. And he was referred to a neurologist who diagnosed him with ALS.
No.
Yeah, it was devastating. They were devastated. And John declined pretty quickly. So by the summer, he was walking with a cane and then a walker and then like a manual wheelchair and then a remote wheelchair.
How old is he?
46.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So they moved out of their 2-level home and into a 1-level condo. And by early 2013, John was bedridden and he was receiving hospice care. But Jim says he was never angry. He was never self-pitying. And Jim was like, I was the one who was angry, but it was hard to stay mad and ask why me, why him, when I saw John being so good about it, just like being like, this is what it is. And I'm going to live my life the best I can while I have it. So they had been together for over 20 years, but they had never married because gay marriage was not legal in Ohio. And they just didn't want to have like some kind of, they didn't want to be symbolic. They wanted it to have legal weight. So in 2013, the Supreme Court struck down a key portion of the Defense of Marriage Act, which gave same-sex couples who were married the same federal benefits in states where same-sex marriage was legal. They now were able to get federal benefits. So when Jim saw this news, he leaned over, he kissed John on the head and said, let's get married. But it still wasn't legal in Ohio, so they had to go to another state to get married. But John was bedridden. And so a friend suggested Maryland, it was legal. So at this point, it was legal in, I think, 33 or 34 states. But they decided to go to Maryland, but John was bedridden. They couldn't drive. They couldn't take a commercial flight. So the only option they had was a medical flight. And when friends and family found out that what their plan was, the friends and family ended up funding the entire $13,000 of the trip. So on July 11th, they got on a plane with John's aunt, Paulette Roberts, who had become ordained online to perform the ceremony. And they flew to Baltimore. And then while they were still on the tarmac, she performed the ceremony.
Oh my gosh.
So they didn't ever even leave the plane.
Wow.
They were just like in Maryland. So they held hands. They stared into each other's eyes. John struggled to speak, but he managed with this ring, Ivy Wed. Oh. And then they kissed, and they were officially husband and husband. And the plane took off and headed back to Cincinnati. And so Paulette said, the aunt said, if marriage vows mean anything, those two were more married than anyone I've ever known. So a few days after the ceremony, a neighbor mentioned the wedding to a civil rights attorney, Al Gerhardstein, who a few of my friends actually from law school worked for in Cincinnati, and when I worked for the federal judge I worked for, he was actually in court. Like we saw him like every week because that is kind of where the federal civil rights courts go to. So that the judge I worked for was a federal judge. And so, and he's like known in Cincinnati for being like the civil rights attorney. He knew they had a problem. He knew that the state of Ohio would not recognize the marriage and would not list Jim as John's surviving spouse on his death certificate. And so Jim and John agreed with Gerhardstein that they wanted to file a lawsuit. And so a federal judge, Timothy Black, who I also knew from my time in the courts, which I was like so proud when I found all this, like, I was like, oh, I know those people. They're so cool. So he ruled in their favor and said the state of Ohio has to recognize this marriage and put, when John dies, they have to put Jim as a surviving spouse. And the decision was like so controversial that a Republican lawmaker called for Judge Black's impeachment, which he was not. But
good.
But so John died a few months later, and because of Judge Black's decision, Jim Obergefell's name was listed on the death certificate as a surviving spouse. But then Ohio appealed the ruling, and the appeals court overruled the decision. So Jim and Al Gerhardstein appealed to the Supreme Court. So that case was consolidated with four others where states. I think it was maybe Kentucky, Indiana, and Michigan maybe. Don't quote me on that, but other states who were not recognizing legal marriages from other states. So sometimes it was because I think in one case it was they were not allowing two adoptive parents to be listed as parents on the birth certificate for kids, even though these were married couples. So this was like a consolidation of four cases, but it was Jim who was the named plaintiff. So the case became known as Obergefell versus Hodges. And the question before the Supreme Court was whether gay couples have the constitutional right to marry. So while they waited for the case to be heard and decided in the Supreme Court, Jim was living alone in the couple's condo. He had their wedding rings fused and wore them together on their left hand. And he said John had wanted him to date again, but Jim was like, I just can't picture it. He was a quiet man. He'd never been an activist before. You know, they had just lived kind of like a quiet life as a couple. But now he was becoming this like symbol in the fight for marriage equality, like speaking at events, making public appearances. And he said, what it's all really about is continuing to fight for John, for the promises I made. It keeps John alive. It's my way of honoring and protecting him. He said, it's hard to put into words how to grasp that our decision to stand up and say, this isn't right, is going to affect so many people. So then on June 26, 2015, the Supreme Court ruled in a 5-4 decision that the fundamental right to marriage is guaranteed to same-sex couples by both the Due Process Clause and the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment, and that the ruling required all 50 states to perform and recognize marriages of same-sex couples. And then I just wanted to read a quote from that decision. So Judge Kennedy wrote the decision, and he said, in forming a marital union, two people become something greater than they once were. As some of the petitioners in these cases demonstrate, marriage embodies a love that may endure even past death. It would misunderstand these men and women to say they disrespect the idea of marriage. Their plea is that they do respect it so deeply that they seek to find its fulfillment for themselves. Their hope is not to be condemned to live in loneliness, excluded from one of civilization's oldest institutions. They ask for equal dignity in the eyes of the law. The Constitution grants them that right. So Jim spent 4 years as an activist, the last 4 years, and he moved to Washington, D.C., and he just recently moved back to Columbus, Ohio, which is the state capital, to be closer to his family and to focus on working at the state level. And he says, I hope my legacy would be of someone that lived up to his promises to love, honor, and protect his husband, and who fought for that no matter what that meant, and along the way helped make our world a little better. So that's the story of John Arthur and Jim Obergefell.
I love that story.
Yeah, who just, took it was just a little thing for them. Like their love grew into this big thing that, he is the reason why,
many couples
can now get married.
Yeah.
So I remember when that decision came down, I was actually on a plane. I was leaving my friend Erin's house to go to Cleveland to do shows. And it came I was on the plane, looking at my phone past the time when you're supposed to turn it off. And I saw the news and I wanted to say something on the plane.
Did
and
you
I was
yell it out?
No, I was crying, but I was oh, I'm not supposed to have my phone on. So I didn't say anything, but I just was it was such an amazing flight just to be this is happening. And I was why am I so emotional? And then a day later, I found out that I was pregnant.
Well, it was an emotional day.
It was an emotional day,
very
regardless.
Valid. I mean, what an amazing day that was. And so many of my, same-sex couple friends who were ceremonially married, but not legally, for them to then be able to go legally get married. My friends Seth and Rob I believe they were the fifth couple. They actually the anniversary was just a few days ago.
Yeah.
And they reposted the story they were the fifth couple in the state of Georgia to be legally married.
That's amazing.
And I remember that they had it was televised all day long.
Yeah, I was couldn't stop watching it.
Oh my God, just tears the whole day. It was just so beautiful and so amazing, and I'll never understand why someone would fight that or argue it or try to keep it from happening.
Right?
It's
so crazy.
That. Yeah. Great story. Oh, I love it.
Good. I hope I did it justice because I was really excited to do it. It's such an amazing, I just wanted to do it justice. So I hope I did.
Yeah. All right. So now, we talked a lot on this episode. So we're going to do our, real quick, something that's dumb and something that we love. This week, my something that is dumb is, the test isn't dumb. It's called Everly Well. It's actually pretty convenient. You can take it at home. If you want to send me some money, Everly Well, for the shout out. But you prick your own finger and you do a blood test and then you send it in and it'll tell you what foods you are allergic to. And the dumb thing is that it came back that I definitely am very reactive to dairy. So, boo. So no milk, no cheese, no fun stuff. So that's pretty dumb. And I'm staring right now.
Right?
And grapes. Oh God, yeah. I was Sally was with me when I read the results, and I was well, thank God. It's milk, cow's milk, and yogurt, and cheese, and then it said grapes, and then I went and coffee, and then coffee. Which that sucks bad, dude.
That's such a bummer.
And so when I went home and I told my husband how it came back, I was well, at least it didn't come back like wine. And he was hey, idiot. Grapes are wine. Yeah. I was why is it all my favorite thing? So It's very dumb. And I don't like it. But something that I love, there's a new show on HBO. It's called Euphoria. Have you watched it yet?
I have not.
Damn, it's so good. I mean, it is like, it's real scandalous.
Yeah.
NSFW. I had to read it aloud in my head. Not safe for work. Don't watch it in front of your kids.
Okay.
It's even a little uncomfortable to watch it in front of your husband. But it's so good and so well written. And if Zendaya, is that how you say her name?
I think it's Zendaya.
Is it Zendaya? If she doesn't win an award for her acting on this show, then I don't even want to live anymore. But she's absolutely like, she'll blow you away. She's amazing. So check out that show. Also,
Okay.
HBO, if you want to send me some money,
I'll
take it. I'll
Anyone
take
wants to
your
send
money.
us money, we'll totally take it. We would totally take it.
What about you, dude?
Okay, well, my dumb thing, it made me think a couple episodes ago, or maybe last episode. I'm sorry, I don't remember, but we've done so many episodes now.
We're professional.
We're profesh. You had asked if I ever accidentally texted the wrong person, and I was like, I don't think so. But it made me remember that. So this is my dumb and thing I love. But so my two best friends, Erin and Grace, we do every day, like pretty much we use the Marco Polo app. Do you know
What is that?
so it's just like a video messaging app. Like you can just, so we'll like, instead of like texting, which we were doing, we just like send each other video messages like while we're walking or whatever. And it's like, it has been so amazing because Erin lives in Colorado and Grace lives in St. Louis. And it's like really like made us so much closer, and we get to it's like you actually know what everybody's doing every day, and you get to see the places they're going
Like
and
hang out.
Yeah, it feels like we're hanging out, and it's like our audio diaries. Like I really feel like I've gotten like worked through a lot of stuff by like kind of just talking about it. I'm like, oh, I didn't realize I was upset about that until I started talking about it to you guys. But it's been really amazing. And I'm so grateful for it, for like our friendship has like just deepened so much, even though we were already really close. But
So Marco Polo, if you want to send Sally some money.
yeah, I did totally do an ad for you. But the dumb thing it made me think of was that a couple times, but one in particular where I just pressed accident. I thought I was like ending it, but I pressed start. And there was one message where I was like poloing while I was like in the car, and it's just like me, like they just got like a 5 minute of me just like
Were you
just
singing
silent
in the car? That's my worst nightmare.
No, that's
is
what they were like. You actually didn't do dumb stuff, but I'm like, I watched it and I was like, oh my god, I'm like, yeah, like checking my hair and doing.
Thank God that's all you did.
Right?
Man, if someone, like, there used to be a show on, I can't remember what channel it was, but it was a hidden camera show where they would put hidden cameras in people's cars to hear them singing to themselves. What a violation. If that, like, that's my biggest nightmare, is that I have a hidden camera,
like a camera somewhere
in my car, and they hear me belting out to see a chandelier.
Oh, they would just hear me being like, fuck you, get on, move on, take a turn. Like honking. I'm such a rageful driver.
I would rather them hear me say fuck you, get out of my way, than to hear my terrible singing voice. Only few have heard it, and I do it to make them laugh.
Yeah.
But oh my God, if it was on camera, I would just die.
I have some goals now.
Man. So that's your dumb thing, but that's pretty, man, you got off easy.
I know, I did get off easy because
Yeah.
yes, I am like, I talk a lot to myself in the car, but I had to watch it to be like, did I? Oh no,
God,
did
what
I?
if you were like, you're a winner, Sally. You're gonna
pumping
get
myself
them.
up.
You're the best, Sally. You can do this. Make that audience your bitch.
I mean,
Man.
and now that you're revealing my pre-show like pump up, all
Pre-show
right.
jams. Oh my God. Well, dude, great episode. I'm so proud of us. We did it again.
We did it again. We just nailed it once again. A perfect episode.
Perfect 10.
You guys, please, thank you so much for listening. It really is. We're so grateful that you're giving us your time. That is like the most precious thing you could give us. So I hope you're enjoying it while you're walking or in the car or whatever you do while you're listening to podcasts. But please share us with a friend. Find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Dumb Love Podcast, and email us at dumblovepod@gmail.com. And thank you guys for listening.
And subscribe and like and rate and review. We ask a lot of you. We're asking like a million. If you could just do one, we'll be
just
your
do
best
one
friend.
thing. Just do the one thing. Just subscribe, rate, and review. And go out there and have a dumb love week.
Yes. Have a great week. Love, Jen and Sally.
Dum 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 dum.